I've just finished mounting these roof racks on my Jetta because I'm going to pick up a new hatch tomorrow. This one is very rusted out, and I found a mint condition, well, as close to mint condition as you can find in Canada for $125. It's held on with the finest hose clamps that Princess Auto could supply. I'm also adding some moral support zip ties because you cannot go wrong with that. I have also added a few more moral support zip ties here and here to stop this from flapping up and down. Here we are approaching the junkyard. And here's just the main way driving in. You can see there's a lot of cars and some weird Citroen van things. In the office. And now we do the walkout because they told me you can't drive in here and that they will bring the part up to your vehicle for you. And here's the sign, you've reached Volkswagen land. And the other sign is being here yesterday and knowing where things are. Here's the ALH I stole to remove from yesterday, but this is not what we're after because it is just a sedan. There it is. Quite possibly the nicest hatch in all of Western Canada. No rust whatsoever. Now the hard part is going to be getting it open. It looks like the hard part's already been done. Somebody's already ripped off all the trim, so all I have to do is do this and push it open from the inside. This door card from the next door Beetle has kindly decided to help hold the hatch open while I get into the headliner to disconnect everything. Everything is now disconnected, and it turns out we just do it all up here, not on the inside of the car. I've already done my first damage to the window as well, with the red part of this scraping off the film, but hopefully that will be repairable. Good thing I brought my trusty pliers wrench with me, because I did not bring the right socket for this. Well, here we are, and it's off. If it weren't for the pliers wrench, I would not have gotten this thing today. Before we leave, I do have to grab something else to fix this badge, because I do not have a 1.8T. Only one of those characters is correct. This TDI wagon hatch is a lot worse than mine. Well, maybe similar, but I've done some repairs. I'm going to steal these. Since it's not overly heavy, I do not feel like waiting for a truck. I'm just going to attempt to carry it back under one arm while I'm carrying my tools and other tools on my back. So close, yet so far. I've made it maybe a quarter of the way. And this thing is heavy. The wind is making it heavy. It's catching it like a giant sail. I'm gonna have to carry all these tools, it'll be a lot easier. And now the last 100 feet are easy. The guy that works here pulled up and told me to throw it in his truck. A little bit dirtier than before, but it is now on. Just need to strap it down. 6 ratchet straps in, and it does not appear to be going anywhere. I do still have some rubber straps though, so maybe I'll try to throw a couple of those on. I don't feel like those rubber straps are doing much, probably just going to contribute to more garbage will hang on the road when they inevitably fly off, but finally ready to hit the road. We're now on and driving, and as soon as you go over 60 kilometers an hour, you get that nice sound. I've already been outside and tried to adjust the straps, but I think it's the ones going lengthwise across the roof of the car. And I'm not restrapping this, so it might be a loud and or slow drive home. That is terrible. I definitely need to stop and something before I continue on. I've taped up the one ratchet strap with a cloth because it might have been hitting the roof. I also taped these two together, so hopefully that will cut down on some of the noise. Now I'm doing 80. I have the sunroof down and some windows cracked, and it sounds a lot better. So one of those things I fixed definitely helped the problem. Now it only starts getting loud once I go over about 85 or 90, and I do not plan on going over those speeds for the rest of my journey home. The trip was successful, pulling into my neighborhood. Strapping has survived the trip. It's still on there. Very good. And I think that little tape job and stop about a kilometer of the way into the trip proved successful. Luckily there were no more stops after that first one. as I was undoing straps, I did find one orange one that was not hooked to anything anymore. So that is slightly concerning, but it obviously was not adding to the integrity because it's still very strong even after loosening that green one too. The hatch has been successfully removed. It probably took longer to remove it than it did to install all the straps. Maybe not. It did take quite a lot of time to put all of those on. And here it is. After some closer examination, I can see there's a little bit of surface rust here. It's not terrible. And then inside, there's some rust here. Taking a wire brush to it, you can see the rust isn't overly bad in here. The worst part is right around the center, probably, but none of it's through. So I think this will be salvageable. Now that the hatch is in the garage, I have it sitting out on a piece of cardboard, and I'm going to start by removing some of the rusty spots. The only thing I'm trying to do here is take off the rust and expose some of the paint to make sure there's no rust hiding underneath that will just come right back through. Don't want to take off a crazy big area of paint, otherwise it'll just be more body filler to fix the low spot. We've now reached bare metal all around, and there's no more rust, so I'm satisfied to move on from that location. You also have to be good at spotting the beginnings of rust where it hasn't fully come through yet. So like right there is a bubble. But if you give it a little bit, you can see there's rust hiding beneath. That spot was actually starting to corrode. Here is the finished back part that I've gone over sanding away the rust spots. That was the only real major one there. And there's a couple more under the license plate. Did some sanding around the screw holes and removed that rusted out screw. And not too much over here and nothing on the top. But we'll flip this around and get to the actual bad spots that are hiding underneath. I have basically finished up this side, and I cannot get over how nice and rust-free it really is. This must have been a very low mileage car before it got scrapped. Taking a look at this side before it even started sanding, you can visually see no rust. I'm sure there's a couple spots below the paint, like right around there. You can see some bubbling, and maybe in that crease. I'll sand it all down to look and make sure. This stuff is stronger than it appears. It's already claimed the end of my Olfa knife. This blade is so rusty because I lost the knife in my backyard in the winter and then found it in the spring. I've managed to find the one spot of rust in this side of the hatch, right here. There's nothing else I could locate in here. It was super clean down that little channel. Now that everything is fully cleaned up on the hatch, I'm going to hit the previously rusty spots with some Rust Check rust paint. I'm just going to hit any bare metal spot with this paint for future prevention. The only bad thing about this stuff is that the nozzle clogs up very quickly. You need to have some brake cleaner on hand. That takes the build up right off. Somehow, either when I was moving the hatch or when I was doing something on the front of it, I got some sort of sawdust or dust all in the paint here. Now I'm going to see if I can somehow repair this damage I caused with that Turbo Beetle door card when I was propping open the hatch. That looks a lot worse. Caused a little bit of damage there, but I think that will be salvageable. Before I go ahead and prime the hatch, I'm going to give it a light sanding with some 600 grit sandpaper and water, not vinegar. I've decided that hand sanding is not going to cut it anymore, so I'm going to use my palm sander. Here it is after the first coat. Turned out not too bad. There are some spots that look a little bit rough still, like here. And then some stuff got in the paint here that I'll have to sand out. Now that this is basically done being primed on this side, I need to go get some Bondo and some paint. We've arrived. The beautiful Princess Auto. We got them. Here's the stuff, and in typical fashion, like the idiot I usually am, I didn't buy anything to spread it with. So I'm going to try these playing cards I just had in the garage. Now that's the smell of bodywork. This is gross and not going how I wanted it to at all. Here it is after some minor Bondo repairs. It goes from looking alright to looking absolutely terrible. You can see I mixed the hardener too much to begin with, so it hardened way too fast on me. There's the spot closer to how it should go on. Here's the first section that I've sanded, and it's now perfectly smooth with the rest of the body. Now I just have all of this to sand down, and of course I picked the nicest spot to begin with, so I will be at this for a while. Here's where I'm at. About an hour or so into sanding, I will go over the rest of the primer with some 1000 grit sandpaper just to smooth the rest of it out and get rid of any high or low spots. I've decided to sand down these hard to get to spaces in here with my Dremel because I don't have a tool small enough. It's not totally smooth, but I am happy with it. This side turned out a lot better since it wasn't nearly as rusted out. Here's the final first sanding before I give it another coat of primer. You can see all these spots I sanded all the way down to their blemishes so that it will come out looking a lot better. I ran out and it started spraying not the best close to the end, so I'm going to have to do some sanding on that. I picked up this can of Rust Check primer on sale for $10 at Princess Auto and gave the whole hatch another spray. I also got these on sale at Princess Auto, which would have been very handy the other day. I think they were there the day I picked up the Bondo, but I just did not see them because they were not with the Bondo. They were just over by the surplus section. How convenient. I finished sanding down the spots and adding a bit more Bondo. Didn't need any here, just sanded it down and just kind of finished it off. I'll wait for it to dry and then sand it down one more time tomorrow. Then it should be ready to prime those couple spots. The hatch is finally ready for its first coat with black. Here is an up-close view after the first quick coat with the Rust Check paint. Now that the rust paint has had some time to dry, I'm going to give it a coat of the gloss trim clad. Run-in number 1 with the outdoors has just occurred. I got some sort of tree particle that landed in the paint. I tried to carefully pick it out by just grabbing the top, but that did not work, and it is now part of the paint. I'll have to let it dry a little bit, then I can pick it out. I'm just leaving all of this interior stuff gold because you won't see it once the trim's on, and I don't want to sand it down and prime it and have a spot for rust. This paint is fine and there's nothing compromising it, so that's how it will stay. I got that. I have sanded down that rough patch that was right here. You can see some of the Bondo. The edge of the sandpaper caught and took off a decent amount of the paint here. You can see there's a scrape and then some edges where you can see through the primer, but I don't think it's big enough to cause any problems. I think a coat of black will fix that up. And just when I thought I was done painting, another spot to fix. I started the first wet sanding with some 1000 grit sandpaper, and it just took a big chunk of the paint off here. It has a bit of a ledge, so I may have to fill that. I see a lot more sanding and Bondo in my future. After some wet sanding, I've actually managed to mostly fix that spot. You can see a little bit here that's slightly lower. After I sprayed that paint on, I waited a couple days so that it could dry and I wouldn't have no flake off again. I have officially had enough of body work, sanding carefully with 2000 grit. I've just been slowly going through or scraping up the paint with no rocks on there, just spots like this on the sandpaper. Got a couple more that have worn through, and then the worst offender right here. Huge scrape. So this whole thing basically needs to be repainted again. I am totally fed up with this. I do not know how somebody would want to make a career out of doing something like this. New update. I decided to give most of the bad spots a respray. It's coming along decently until I stepped in my puddle of sanding runoff and splashed it all over. As a human, I made a choice that was probably not the most optimal one. I decided to wash the polymer right beside the hatch here. Didn't really get too wet, but then afterwards I decided I would take the old hose here and spray off the parts that had metal over them. The paint seemed dry to the touch, but it's probably only been 10 or 15 minutes since I painted it. I guess I will see if that ruined the paint or not. I started trying to sand on it again with some 2000 grit sandpaper, a new piece, and proceeded to scratch the paint up really bad. So I've decided to go over it with primer again so I can find and cover the scratches better. Here it is after some more Bondo and sanding and painting. It's finally starting to look decent, and I hopefully will not have to add any more primer. Just picked up this Krylon Fusion all-in-one 5 times stronger adhesion from Co-op for $20. Really paid up for this, but hopefully it will hold up for my final coat of paint. Really don't want to have it peeling or flaking off. Thank you, Volkswagen, for that security. I will say, after giving a heavy coat of this paint, it is a lot better quality than some of the other spray paints I've used. It's a lot less prone to running. I didn't get any runs in this, and I sprayed it on pretty thick. I know I would have gotten runs if I would have used regular Tremclad. So far, I do recommend this paint. I've just done a sanding with 1500 grit, lightly over the whole thing, and then I went on it more in this section. I did a decent amount with the 1500, then moved up to 2000, and then I also gave it a quick polish to see what the finished product will look like. You can see there's a decent amount of orange peel going on around the edges, not as much in the center. You're seeing lots of the scratches, but that's just because it was freshly polished. And then down here, not sure if it's really showing up on camera, but right there, I kind of sanded through the, stop switching cameras, iPhone, kind of sanded through that Krylon paint into the Tremclad, so you can see a different black. I can't really see it on camera very well, but you can notice it in person. So I think I'm going to give it another coat there, and then down here, you can see I got back down to the original gold color, so I will have to repaint that. I just recorded the opposite of what I wanted to, me installing the camera on the tripod and taking it off. Here are the results after some 2000 grit sanding. I'm getting close though, close to giving up. I feel like calling it a day after wearing sandals out here with socks, and they're very soggy and disgusting, and I hate it. So that's probably all that happens on this today. I have now gone over the whole thing with 1000 grit, 1500 grit, and 2000 grit sandpaper. I think everything will look decent after polish. I'm using my drill with a buffing wheel and some Mother's California Gold. I should really be using a proper tool, but I don't care. Here's the first damage I caused. The plastic chuck of the drill scraped into the paint when the polishing wheel fell out. That caused all of this damage, the scratch there, that there. There were some other assorted spots where I was working too close, the chuck hit. That's just some polish that still needs to be wiped off. The top looks like it needs some more actual sanding because I couldn't get it polished nicest on the bottom part. That might just wait until after it's installed in the car to be dealt with. Over here turned out decently, except for right there, which is another spot that I hit with the chuck. The spray paint did not like the polish and decided to bubble up. It looks extra terrible here and it started running. This thing will never be installed on my car. I have finally decided that I've gotten the paint to a point where I'm just done with it on the ground. Anything else I need to do, I can do on the car, and it looks fine, I guess. Now I'm marking out where the badges are going to go. Before I put the badges on the car, I'm going to give them a quick polish with some Mother's mag and aluminum polish. After just a little bit of polishing, the A looks a lot nicer than the J does. So the plan is I'm going to use this dollar store super glue and put some glue on the back of each one of these and then line it up in its proper location. I really don't want to get glue dripping everywhere because I had that happen on the last hatch, but it was also in the upright position mounted on the car. Immediately drip it on the paint. Well, this is going exactly the opposite of how I wanted it to go, getting glue all over the badge and all over the paint. Fuck, and now it's not sticking. I'm gluing the rag into it. I have absolutely no trust that these will stay on the way they're going. This is going absolutely horribly. And I still have 5 letters to go. Well, this one is now gluing itself to my finger. They are all on there now. Somehow you can see the gap between the J and the E ended up larger than the other letters. You can see the gap is about 4 millimeters here, and over here, like 10 millimeters. The TDI ended up a lot nicer, apart from the spilled glue. Otherwise though, from a distance, it looks a lot nicer than my other hatch does. I tried to carefully peel off the J to move it, and that didn't happen at all. So I'm just gonna glue it back down and pretend this little miracle didn't ever happen. Now I'm taking off the hatch from the car. I found out after reading online that you can just use an 8mm 12-point wrench, or ideally socket, to take it off. I don't have a socket like that, I only have the 6.1, so I'm just gonna use a wrench. Now that those are decently loose, I'm going to take off the hatch struts. Now the bolts are fully out, so I should be able to just take it off. Well, that didn't work as well as I expected it to, take me down, but at least it's off. I have created some more repairs for myself. When I was taking out the locking cylinder unit, I didn't notice the 3rd screw holding it in, so I started prying on it and broke this part of the outer circle of the VW logo. The lock mechanism is now installed in the other hatch, and in doing so, I remembered that I either broke these wires off of the connector, or it was already like that at the Rackers. The plan is to get the new hatch on. It actually worked better than expected. This would be a lot nicer with the ratchet. I've got the other connector ready to be soldered, so I'll see if I can get that on, and if I can even film it. Probably would have been an easier task to do when the hatch was still on the ground, but here we are. I have that all finished now. Before I actually shut the hatch, I wanted to make sure I could open it with the key. I did get it to work now. I turn the key, it will pop open. I needed to do a decent amount of adjusting in here to get it to pull far enough, because I was doing that before, so that works. The only thing left is to test the one brake light, and it works. Let's see if the lights work. Now the outside of the window just needs a good scraping to get rid of the overspray. I already scraped off most of it once when I hadn't masked the window very well or at all, and it got just covered in black paint. I really am not happy with the damage I caused to the coating of the window at the wreckers. It's very noticeable and looks absolutely terrible. Other than that, the window looks decent apart from a few other minor imperfections. This project isn't nearly as finished as I wanted it to be for being installed in the car, but it's been in the works for about a month because I've had a lot of other things going on, like working on my house and such. So I figured I'd just get it done. I'm sick of having it sitting around in my garage and in my yard. So I just decided I'd get it on today and I'll work out the other problems as I go. Then it looks decent apart from that and that and just the paint work in general, but it's salvageable. So yeah, that's everything for this one.